Hello, everyone. This is the fourth lecture of Law and Economics. We are going to talk about the property right today. Property right is what we have talked about, in simple word, private ownership. There are some political group who denies the necessity of private ownership. However, in many countries, free market system based on, which really hinges on the private ownership, in other words, property right. So basically, we want to answer three questions. Number one, why do we need a private property? Number two, who should get the property right? Who should be the owner? Number three, how to protect the property right? There are thieves and things like that. Somebody violates your property asset, then it's the government's job to protect it from the other influence, outside influence. There are many ways to protect it, and we are going to talk about that. Number one, why do we need the property right? Let's think about the long time ago. Okay, it may happen, probably happen. There must be lots of hunters at first. People do not have the idea of farming. But then, one day, some human being, maybe tens of thousands of years ago, found out a corn and they ate it, like wild corn. It's not cultivated, wild corn, and they ate it, brought home, ate more, and they threw away. And they found out, strange enough, there grow a corn over there. So he thought about it. Oh, I threw a corn over there last year, and now the corn grow up, and I don't have to wander around to find out the wild corn, but corn would be just in front of my house. Maybe that is the beginning of farming. And one person and another, they throw some corns in their yard, and the next year they have a corn. Person A, let's say Tom, and person B, that is Bob. And then one day, Tom think, oh, I passed by in front of Bob's house. There are lots of corns. And I think, oh, I'm hungry. He took some of them. If I'm a Bob, I would be upset. The problem is, until now, the rule is you found the corn first, you eat it first. So it doesn't really matter whether the corn was just in front of Bob's. So Tom can justify his idea. I just took the corn. It doesn't matter whether corn is deep inside the mountain or just in front of Bob's house. Corn is a corn. The first founder would eat the corn. Bob would get angry, and he also realized Tom had some corns in front of his house. So at night, he went to Tom's house and took all the corn from Tom's house. So they fight each other, stealing each other's corns. So people realize, okay, I put some corn seed in front of my yard so that I can have an easy access to the corn next year. Instead, Tom is stealing my Bob's corn and Bob is stealing Tom's corn. And what's the point of seeding the corn in from my yard because the other neighbors are stealing each other? And at first it thought it looks to be a good idea to have a corn in front of your house, but then you just revenge, you cannot sleep, and you fight your neighbor, and in the end, you cannot eat much of your corns because people stealing each other. So they say, okay, it is really stupid because we are just stealing from each other and nobody gains out of it. My original idea is I have 100 corns, I steal Bob's corn, maybe 100, then I would have 200 corns. Instead, I stole Bob's corn, 100, but Bob stole my corn, so minus 100. So even though I'm stealing, I'm still get 100. What is even worse is because I couldn't sleep well at night because I'm stealing Bob's corn, actually the corn is not going to be 100, what I have expected if I give them water and work hard. The corn is most likely 80. So people think, okay, let's stop stealing from each other. Then Tom would get 100. He has a nice sleep at night. Bob would have 100 coins, nice sleep at night. And everybody gains out of it because they can have a nice sleep instead of sneaking into other people's house. And then instead of 80, they more concentrate on raising coins and they have a better harvest. So this is the social contract theory to people finally acknowledge the property right. They get it together. Okay, let's respect the coins in front of other people's yard. Don't take them otherwise unless you ask them first. Good. So that looks to be a beginning of private ownership. Of course, there's another story that I told you before. There's a big robber or big guy, strong guy, who want to monopolize the tax from the farmers. So he kicks everyone out, and every other robbers, bandits out, and they say, these farmers' coins are theirs, nobody touch them, on the condition that the farmers pay me the tax. Okay, I'm the only guy who gets it. But anyway, it's not social contract, but very strong, like a guy guarantees nobody stealing from each other so that he can get more coins. So there can be two theory about how the property right evolves. To be frank with you, the economists support more about this strong robber, strong guy theory. But anyway, in the end, both system ended up guaranteeing the property right. Why? It's simple. If you understand the property right, private ownership of each members of the society, they can work harder in production and the production increase. In many cases, maybe 50%, as the oyster case I talked about. So there's one country which guarantees the property right, one country just no property right, stealing each other. Usually the country with the property right can produce with the same resource, same people produce maybe 50, 100% more, the other country much less. So in the end, the stronger country prevail and the weak country would be observed into stronger country. So like evolution of legal system, we can predict the property right should be protected because it increased the productivity. Okay, then who should get the property right? We are going to start with a very specific example. Let's assume that there are neighboring horse ranch and carrot farm. I never raised a horse. I never farmed carrot. But in many movies and everywhere, I heard that horses like carrot a lot. It's not hard to predict at night the horses are sneaking into or ran into the carrot farm and eat all the carrots. If that happens, as we can see in the first line, the loss of carrot would be $100. How can you prevent that? Realistically, there are two options. Number one, you can build a fence around the ranch, horse ranch, or you can build a fence around the farm. If you build a fence around the ranch, the horse cannot get out of it, so carrot cannot be eaten. if you set the fence around the farm, the horse can get out of a ranch but cannot get into the farm. So equally, we can prevent the horse from eating the carrot. It's natural to assume that the ranch is much bigger than the carrot farm. So fence around the ranch, for example, the cost would be $80. On the other hand, fence around the farm, only $40. So there can be 4 actions. Of course, number 1 is not setting any fence. So it's non-action, but still action will regard it. The other action, fence around the ranch. The other action, fence around the farm. Socially, the first option is $100 loss. Second is cost is also loss, so $80 loss. And the third, fence around the farm, is $40 loss. So, which is best for the society? The smaller number is better in this case because it's negative number, loss. So, fence around the farm is best option for the society. Okay? And economists call this efficient. You achieve something with a small least cost. Okay? So here, what I want to find out is whether economists think it's efficient or not depends on the action. Okay? So the action result, if we see that means whether it's efficient or not efficient. Here, if you see the fence around the farm, the result is the action is efficient. If you see no fence, if you see fence around the ranch, they are inefficient. Okay? Then, other than the action we talked about, there's another respect, that is rule. People, the rancher and farmer, they in the end act. Whether there's no fence or a fence around the farm, fence around the ranch. But why would they do that? How can we drive them to that action? That is the rule. Actually, that is the law we are talking about. So we want to have a rule that would in the end results in the efficient action. There can be only 2 rules. Rule number 1, the rancher is responsible. So rancher should pay. Number 2, the farmer is responsible. In this case, the rancher does not have to pay. Okay? So even though, number 2, even the horse eats all the carrot, the judge said, oh, you should have been careful. The rancher has nothing to do. The horse is naturally can eat anything. So farmer's fault it is. On the other hand, in rule number 1, if the horses eat the carrot, the judge would say, oh, the horses did the wrongdoing, the rancher should be responsible. If the rule is rancher is responsible, rancher either let the horse eat the carrot and pay the money, which is $100. Of course, he would rather build a fence around his ranch, which is less than 100, which is assumed $80. But that's not the end. The rancher can approach the farmer and suggest, okay, I can give you $60. So can you build a fence around the farm? And the farmer would think, oh, build a fence around the farm would cost me only $40. If I'm getting paid $60, why not? So in the end, the rancher's cost is $60 here, negative $60. The farmer earns $60, but build a fence at the cost of $40, so his net profit would be $20. And is it efficient? Yes. In the end, where is the fence? The fence, because the farmer get paid and build, we can see the fence around the farm, not the ranch. And we know that that's efficient, so the result is efficient. Rule number 2, the farmer is responsible. okay, farmer want to cry, the horses did something wrong, why should I be responsible? But anyway, in the end, the farmer would think, okay, if I don't do anything, I lose $100 every day. Instead, if I set a fence around my farm, the cost would be only $40. So, in the end, he will build a fence around the farm. Well, I told you over and over again, if you see the fence around the farm, in that action, we call that efficient. In this case, the rancher pays nothing, so 0, farmer negative 40. They are both efficient because we see the fence around the farm. But money-wise, in first case, rancher negative 60, farmer 20, so the net loss of society is minus 60 plus 20, which is negative 40. In the second case, 0 plus negative 40, negative 40. So if you look at the money case, both resulted in the added welfare of rancher and farmer would be both negative $40, negative $40. $40 loss, $40 loss. So I'm not just saying the fence, but the money calculation would be same. Of course, even though society-wise, rule number 1, rule number 2 are both efficient, from rancher's point of view, he strongly prefers rule number 2 because he lose nothing in rule number 2, but he lose negative 60 in rule number 1. Farmer's case, farmer strongly prefer the first rule because farmer even gains 20 but loses 40 in the second rule. So the individuals has a strong preference, but as a society, they are both efficient. Now, we have one realistic assumption. That is transaction cost. In Korean, 거래 비용. What is transaction cost? Here, I just naively assume that the rancher approached the farmer and suggests, oh, I'll pay you $60, so why don't you build a fence around the farm? But all these things has a cost. Maybe the rancher should buy a lunch to the farmer in order to smooth his talking. And when they agree upon something, they have to write something, but maybe legally they are concerned, so they call a lawyer. So lawyer can write a contract. Then you have to pay the lawyer. So all this negotiation between rancher and farmer may not be free. We call that transaction cost. So, let's go back. In the second rule, rule number 2, there's no negotiation necessary. The farmer is responsible. He's angry to the judge, but in the end he said, oh, I talked to rancher. I can gain nothing, so I just set a fence. In rule number 1, however, the rancher would definitely talk to the farm, and that process is negotiation. Excuse me. So let's assume that the transaction cost is 50. What would happen? The rancher cannot agree with the farmer because the rancher can offer only, okay, I can pay up to 80. If it's over 80, I would rather set a fence around the ranch. That is cheaper. On the other hand, the farmer should get paid $40. So there's $80 and $40. There's a $40 gap between these two costs. But then just negotiating, the $50 cost happens. Let's assume that cost happens to the rancher. The rancher said, oh, if I build my own fence around the ranch, it's $80. But if I once begin to negotiate with the farmer, there's a $50 cost already. Then I would be stupid to pay the farmer more than $30 because in the case, if more than 30, like 40, 50 plus 40 would be $90, then I would rather build a fence around the ranch instead of negotiating with the farmer. Okay? So they give up negotiation and the fence would be around the ranch. The answer, inefficient, because we see the fence around the ranch. What if it's $30? Now it's negotiable. The rancher think, okay, I pay $30 transaction cost, buy him lunch, bring the lawyer. Still, I can pay up to $50 because if I build the fence around the ranch, it's $80, $30 cost. If it's like $45, I agree with the farmer, then still I can gain. The total cost will be 30 plus 45, 75, so I gain $5. The farmer get paid $45. The cost is 40, so $5. Small gain, 5, but they would agree. So in the end, if the transaction costs $30, we can see the rancher and farmer agree each other and the fence around the farm. Is it efficient? No, because even though we see the fence around the farm as we want it, there are $30 costs in the process. So it's not just the $40 cost for the fence around the farm plus 30. So socially it's $70. If you compare rule number 2, the farmer would be disappointed, but just set a fence around the farm, the social cost would be 40. But if the transaction cost is $30, there would be a fence around the farm, but it's not only $40 cost, the transaction cost should be added $70. So in this case, it's so clear if there's a transaction cost bigger than 0, rule number 2, the farmer is responsible, is efficient rule, then rule number 1, the rancher is responsible. Because rule number 2 lead to a better efficient action than rule number 1. So it goes like that. If we do not consider the transaction cost, rule number 1, rule number 2 doesn't matter. They are the same. The result will be efficient because people negotiate each other, they ended up better result. However, if there's a transaction cost, the people talking to each other and make an agreement itself is costly. So if the rule drive people away from negotiation, still the efficient result, that is better rule. So from this efficient point of view, when the horses get into the carrot farm and eat them, and the fence around farm, the cost is smaller than fence around the ranch, the efficient rule should be the farmer is responsible. Okay, do you agree or not? Okay, think it over.